Powered by Virginia Radio.
Hello. All righty. Thank you all for coming here to this podcast, my podcast called Let Me Say Something. My name is Big Al. I am the HNIC of this podcast. We're doing something a little bit different today. Okay, a little bit different. Okay, we're doing what we call Black Story Time. And Black Story Time, how'd you come up with that, Al? Well, I came up with that because I talked to a lot of young people, and I've realized that a lot of young people, black people, period, we just don't know our own history. Okay, now, we know Dr. Martin Luther King, and we know Reggie Jackson and Al Sharpton, and we know all those people. But we don't realize, a lot of the young people don't realize that they are standing on the shoulders of people that are standing on the shoulders of those of us of those people that have made it so that we have freedom today. Okay, so that's something that really is that I want to bring to the surface. Okay, so we don't, with the people that we don't know, those are the ones that I want to bring to the surface. Okay, so you know where your history comes from. You know the shoulder that you're standing upon. You know that you're great. You know where the greatness is coming from. You understand, or at least you should understand, that freedom is not free. And that's what we're going to be doing today with Black Story Time. I'm trying to make you aware of what black people have gone through to actually get to the point where you take freedom for granted. And it's kind of ironic because one of the things that was said in the campaign during the presidential campaign was, hey, we're going to stop. I think Biden said he's going to stop systematic racism, which is ironic because he was one of the guys that were back in the day that was against segregation. Okay, and which is what Kamala was trying to tell everybody while during the campaign. Nobody listened. He said, check my record. Nobody checked his record. But for him to say he's going to get rid of systemic racism is a farce. But once again, that's not what the show is about. Okay, the show is called this particular show is called Black Story Time. The name of the podcast is Let Me Say Something. And I want to get started by telling you about one of the bravest people that I've actually discovered. Some of you may know her. Her name this is the story of Recy Taylor. That's Recy Taylor, R-E-C-Y Taylor. Recy Taylor is indeed one of the bravest women in history, and she is someone that had been forgotten up until recently. Oprah made a movie about her, and and it was something that really was long overdue. She passed away, I believe, in 2017 at 97, almost 98 years of age, three days short of her birthday. But just getting to the story here. Ms. Recy Taylor, on September the 3rd, 1944, was walking with her friend Fanny and her friend and Fanny's teenage son from an evening service at their church. They're walking down a dirt road, and when a car pulled up containing 7 white men, and they jumped out and they approached Recy Taylor, this lovely 24-year-old black woman, and they told her, "Oh, you're the one that must have cut my guy Tom Corbett." She had no idea who Tom Corbett was. Of course, she didn't do it. She didn't know what they were talking about, but she did realize that they were trying to get her in that car, and she tried to run. They caught her. Now you're going to say, well, Al, well, why didn't everybody else do something? Because I know there are other people on that road. There were. But he got out with a gun. His name was Henry. He got out with a gun. And they forced her into the car. They took her, these 7 white men took her to the woods. And they told her to take her clothes off. And when she wasn't doing it fast enough, they helped her do that by ripping her clothes off, ripping the clothes off of her. They then threw her on the ground. And before they started to rape her, they told her, act like you do when you lay down with your husband, or we're going to cut your throat. Seven men grabbed her. 6 men participated in raping her. And the entire time, she had to act like she enjoyed it. Can you imagine how petrified she was? Can you imagine how upset she was? Can you imagine the fear? Because even though this is 1944. They were hanging men and women from trees. They were burning them while they were hanging. Sometimes they were burning them alive. And no one was doing anything about it. The fear that must have gone through this woman's brain, her heart must have stopped. She must have had a total conniption. I mean, I can't even imagine the fear that she was going through. She begged them to let her go on her way, to take her back to her husband and her new child. She was a baby. And they wouldn't. They kept raping her over and over and over again. The husband went to look for her. And by this time, her friend Fanny and her son had reported this to her husband. They in turn went to a former police officer, a white man who ran a store, and told him. He in turn told the sheriff. In the meantime, the husband was frantic. Of course he was, looking for his wife. He finally found her. Because they didn't kill her. They told her to shut up, and they were going to blindfolded her, tossed her out of the car, naked. When her husband found her, she was walking down the road, barely walking, with the blindfold half on and half off. She was just walking. More like what her husband said, she was stumbling. Back in 1944, for some of you all that are saying, that wouldn't happen to me, man. If that were me, I would. Stop it. Stop it. I just told you that this was, oh, by the way, I didn't tell you the location. The location was Abbeville, Alabama. This was Abbeville, Alabama. She and her husband were sharecroppers. They didn't have money. So you're saying, well, Al, didn't this happen all the time? It happened more frequently than anyone would like to admit to black women during that time frame. So what makes this different? What makes this different is how she handled it. They told her, if you tell anybody, we will kill you We will burn down your house, kill your husband, your children, if you mention a word of this to anyone. She went home and told her father, her husband, and then her father what happened. Now, she and her father did not live together. Her father had a separate house with his family. She had a house with her husband, and with her husband, where she was making a family. So, and that's what makes this a little different, is that she in turn decided to press charges, which was unheard of back in 1944. A black woman that was gang raped by 6 white men, possibly 7, to actually press charges. Now, keep in mind, there were witnesses that saw her being abducted, that saw who took her, and they all came forward and saying it was so and so and so, and they gave names, etc., and so forth. However, the sheriff did not arrest anyone. He talked to one or two of them. He talked to one or two of them, but no one was actually arrested. Again, 1944. Eventually, what happened was, okay, they got no justice. They got no justice. There was a quick trial that was held. They brought the men in. Remember, the men were never actually arrested. They were just accused of raping her. And even though they had evidence that she was taken she was she was abducted, grabbed off the side road. They knew the men that took it, etc. They took them. They saw everything that happened with the exception of the rape. The trial happened. The first trial that happened was quick. They did the trial, and they were acquitted all in the same day. All in the same day. Now, this is what separates Reese Taylor from others. She pursued it. She contacted the NAACP. The NAACP sent their hammer. They sent the person that would take that had no patience, that would not be intimidated. They sent down, you're going to remember this name, Rosa Parks, to investigate. Rosa Parks went down to Abbeville, Alabama in 1944, and she started conducting an investigation. With the investigation, the sheriff, I think it's Sheriff Gamble, he tried to intimidate her while she was at Reese's house. Asking questions, the sheriff kept driving by real slow, staring at the house. He must have realized that wasn't going to do anything. So he ran up to Reese Taylor's house. Now, keep in mind, this is Reese Taylor's house. He kicked in the door while Rosa Parks was there and told her, "We don't want no damn trouble here. If you don't get the blankety blank out, I'm going to have you arrested because you're a troublemaker." Now, this is a woman that was raped by 6 men, gang raped. But Rosa Parks was a troublemaker. They ended up, and Rosa Parks left. She left. And when she came, but she did not lose her resolve. She came back ready for a fight. She came back hard, let me tell you. And when she came back, what she did was she organized the, I can't think what it's called. She organized the Alabama Committee for Equal Justice. Okay? Now keep in mind, she was there. The sheriff tried to threaten her, and he did threaten her, told her to get the hell out. She got the hell out. And I'm pretty sure he didn't think she was coming back. But god dang Rosa, he didn't know Rosa like Rosa knew Rosa. Rosa came back with a vengeance. And the first thing she did when she got into Alabama was she set up the Alabama Committee for Equal Justice. Okay? Now, once again, this is what separates Reese Taylor from others that happened to. Okay? Reese wanted to pursue it. Reese was ready to name everybody that raped her. Reese, and she did. Okay, it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. So the lawyer for the 7 men, the first thing that happened, the only thing that actually happened with the first trial was that the driver of the car got a $250 fine. That's about a $3,000 fine today, about $3,500 a day. Okay, but back then he got a $250 fine. So that was all that happened. Now the second trial, so what happened was when Rosa Parks got back, she sent on letterhead, the letterhead of Alabama Committee for Equal Justice, she sent to the governor, and she requested a separate investigation for this act. And her point was, how could you not? The governor listened. Now, he launched an investigation. Now this I have to read to you because you're not going to believe this. Okay? Sheriff Gamble was interviewed again about the measures he took to ensure justice on behalf of Taylor. Sheriff Gamble falsely claimed that he started an investigation of his own on his own immediately after the attack. Not true. He also claimed that he had arrested all of the men involved in the rape 2 days after the assault. Again, not true. And that he had placed Hugo Wilson, the man identified as the owner of the car, under a $500 bond. Not true. He also accused Taylor of being nothing but a whore around Abbeville. Not true. And that she had been treated for some time by the health officer of Henry County for venereal disease. Guys, we can't make this stuff up. You can't make this stuff up. This was 1944. Okay? Now later, other white men from Abbeville identified Taylor as an upstanding, respectable woman who abided by the town's racial and sexual mores. Investigators interviewed the rapist. 4 of the 7 men admitted to having intercourse with Taylor, but argued that she was essentially a prostitute and willing to participate. Remember, now she's a prostitute that they took by gunpoint, threw her in a car with 7 men, and she was willing to participate. Huh. Now others, including the guy named Herbert Lovett, he's the guy driving the car. There was another guy there that his name was Herbert Lovett. He denied knowing anything about the attack. However, one of the assailants, a guy named Joe Culpepper, admitted that he and other rapists were looking for a woman the night of the attack. That Lovett got out of the car with a gun and spoke to Taylor. That Taylor was forced into the car and later forced out of the car and made to undress at gunpoint, was raped, later blindfolded, and left on the side of the road. Culpepper's retelling of the story was directly in line with Taylor's original account. However, even with this information, including several of the alleged assailants' testimonies, the Attorney General failed to convince the jurors of Henry County that there was enough evidence to charge 7 suspects when he presented Taylor's case on February 14th, Valentine's Day, 1945. The second all-white male jury refused to issue any indictments. So nothing actually happened to them. Nothing happened to them at all. Nothing happened at all. Okay? So her story got buried. Alabama didn't, what they said was it's okay to rape black women. It's okay to abuse black women. It's okay to do whatever you want if you are a white male. Now, keep in mind, in the South, black cities have been destroyed for the rumor of a black man raping a white woman. And remember, these rumors were never true. But the rumor of a black man raping a white woman caused people to be killed, black people to be killed, caused towns to be burnt down and eradicated from the face of the earth. Just the rumor of it. When I first came across this story, it made me very, very angry. I came across this story about 15 years ago. And I was shocked that I hadn't heard about it. I was shocked that I hadn't heard the name of Reese Taylor. You know, one of the reasons why I bring this up, and one of the reasons why I'm going to be doing Black Story Time probably once a month, is simply because we need to deal with these issues. We need to deal with racism. One of the reasons why racism will never be dealt with and never go away is because white people never want to admit how badly they were, how horrible they were to black people just because we look different. They don't want to believe it. They don't want to believe it. They don't want to. No, they can't wrap their minds around it. We cannot be that terrible. We cannot be that terrible. Now, black folks having trouble talking about it because we get angry, because we know how horrible you were. Why? We got family members that told us. You know, I got a father who's 90, going almost 91 years old. He tells me all kinds of things about when he was a kid and what white men did and said to him, etc. He lived over in a place called Cape Charles, Virginia. His family didn't have two nickels to rub together. But white people thought they could treat black people any kind of way. Until we have an honest discussion about racism will always exist. But we have to have an open mind about it. And a lot of us don't. A lot of us want to think that, hey, you know, this is America, and we're the best country in the world, which we may be. But we have our secrets. We have our past that we don't want to deal with. You know, we are the caretakers of the world, and we keep putting ourselves up on a pedestal like we're better than everyone else, and we're not. When the so-called insurrection happened on January 6th, one of the reasons why everybody said, "Oh my God, this can't happen in America," well, it just did. It just did. It just did. So when you sit there and say that America's better than everyone else, don't say that. Don't even think it. We're not there yet. We're simply not there yet. And we have a long ways to go. Now, Reese Taylor is not the only Reese Taylor in history. Not by a long shot. But she was one of the ones that actually fought. She fought. You know, as a matter of fact, it got so bad for her that her family, her husband and her daughter, had to move in with her father and her family. And every night there was somebody with a rifle in a tree protecting the house. Every night. Every night for over a year. Can you imagine that? For years, Reese Taylor did not go out at night. And she didn't go out, and she didn't want to go out in the daytime either. Can you imagine how that rape by 6 men, possibly 7, affected her? Who she could have talked to? Nobody. Who could have related to her? Nobody. But she persevered. She kept going. She lived to be 97, almost 98 years old. She was 3 days short of her 98th birthday. When you talk about strength, okay, and ladies, black women, hear me. when you talk about strength, strength is not about getting a bag or being a boss. That's not strength. Strength is when you get abused just like she did, and you handle your business with dignity. When you're not vengeful. The way she described it was, those white boys took me in the woods and they messed with me. That's how she described it. They messed with me. By all accounts, she was a Christian lady. She was a good woman. She was kind, sweet. You know, her husband may have been the only one until that time that she had ever been with. This was a good woman. So black women, when you all talk about strength, this is a woman that was strong. This is a woman that kept going under unbelievable circumstances where she could have been killed. Not only during a rape, but after. Her family's house could have been burnt down. Her children could have been hurt. She stayed right there in Alabama. I know you're gonna say, well, she couldn't go nowhere, blah, blah. Well, no, you can always go somewhere else. Start over. But that was her home. She was determined not to go, not to leave. Her husband stood beside her. Her husband didn't go after and kill anybody. Because if he had done that, he would be in jail. The family wouldn't have a father or a provider. See, this is a different kind of strength. This is a different kind of power. I hear young people always talking about, particularly these young girls, talking about their strength, their power. You know, how they're bosses and all this kind of stuff. Haven't gone through jack crap. Haven't gone through anything. With Black Story Time, each time I'm gonna give you a situation or a person where you're gonna say, "Oh my goodness," because you need to know the shoulders that you're standing on to enjoy the freedom that you have, and you need to understand that freedom is not free. Freedom is sacrifice. Freedom is perseverance. Freedom is understanding. Freedom is understanding, knowing where you want to go, where you need to be. And that's something that we have to understand and appreciate, because we don't appreciate, particularly young folks, we don't appreciate our elders enough. We don't appreciate the shoulder we're standing on. We don't appreciate our older population enough, because they have wisdom. They suffered for you. My father was telling me how they called him a boy. I never forget him. We were walking in Newport News, and I must have been, I don't know, I could barely walk. I think I may have been 4, maybe 5. I can't remember. Only thing I remember, we were walking down Jefferson, and this white man was walking towards us, and he bumped into my father. And he said, "Watch yourself, boy." And my father said, "Now hold on a second." He said, "Mister, you see this? See my son right here?" He said, "He's a boy." He said, "I'm not a boy." And he looked right at that man's face. He had to look up at the man. He said, "So you gonna call me a boy again?" And they just looked at each other. And the man, and this white man, I'll never forget it, he goes, "I'm sorry." And he walked off. It was one of the few times I saw my father angry enough where I thought he was going to knock the freak out of that guy. I thought he was going to hit him. I thought it was on. And I was only like about 5 years old. I've never seen my father that angry. And his voice was not any higher than a whisper. And I say that because if you know my father, he gets kind of animated stuff. You know, he'll start shaking his finger and raising what's that. But this time he didn't do that. That man bumped him on Jefferson Avenue and called my father a boy. And my father said, "Excuse me, sir, He's a boy. That's my son. He said, I'm not a boy. Do you care to say that again? And that word boy did not come out of that man's mouth. Good thing for him too. We have examples all through history how black folks rise above. Think about black folks being sent from slavery into slavery from Africa. Now understand that you're putting in so many people that you're packing them into side to side, end to end. In other words, head to foot. They are sitting in their own excrement. There's no bathrooms. There's no bathrooms. They're coming across the Atlantic. They're being fed stuff that they can't tolerate. They're getting sick. They're getting fed food. A lot of it's spoiled. The rocking of the ship is making them sick, and they're side by side, men and women. Women in one compartment, men in another. And they're lying in filth, feces, urine, vomit, being taken across the Atlantic as a commodity to be sold. Know the shoulders you're standing on, and appreciate it, respect it. For those of you that think you're bosses, I'm going to tell you no to that. For those of you that think that you can do whatever you want, you need to appreciate that and thank someone for that. For those of you that think that you're better because you're earning a lot of money, you're not. The sacrifices our people have been vast, have been substantial. And I want to bring all this to the surface. And you need to understand that this is going to be brutal. Because what I'm going to bring to story time next time is going to be something that's going to make you're not going to believe it. You're not going to believe it. I know I didn't when I first read it. I had to read it, I had to do some research, but I didn't believe it. And you got to understand something. When you talk to white people about these things, they can't possibly understand how it affects you. And for you blacks that are maybe married or dating white people, got nothing against that. Okay? But understand they don't know your struggle, and they need to understand that the struggle is real. The reason why black people fight so hard against police brutality is because it's been going on for so long. The only difference between police brutality now and police brutality 30 years ago is simply cell phones. That's it. In other words, you can see it in real time and show it to somebody else in real time. That's the only difference. Is there a different attitude? A little bit. Do we have more people that on the police force that care, that look like us? We do. And I'm not saying there's not progress. I'm not saying that at all. But once again, freedom's not free. And there's so much stuff that America has hidden in the recesses of history that it's shameful. It really is shameful. Have you ever wondered why black history is not taught in schools, but European history is? Because I'm going to tell you the truth. I don't give a damn about France's history or Italy. I really don't care. But I had to learn about Napoleon Bonaparte. Had to learn about all the Roman Empire. Had to learn about all that other stuff. And I know compared to those places, America doesn't have much history, but we have a lot of it that we don't teach. The reason why they don't teach black history is because it's a sordid, nasty, filthy history where whites were compliant with the suffering of another people, and they don't want that exposed. That's the reason. There's no reason why you can't put black history in history books. There's no reason why you can't do it. But if you do that, you expose American history. You expose the whites. You expose the evil. You expose the insensitivity of one people towards another person. I wish those stories didn't exist, but they do. I wish that there were only just there that there was no other Reese Taylors, but there are many that we don't know about. Why? Because they were told by white men, if you say something, I'm going to kill you. We're going to kill your family. We're going to burn your house down. So they didn't. They said nothing. And this went on before 1944 and after 1944. You know, I think the last public hanging, was in Macomb, Mississippi in 1972. Understand where you come from. Understand that you are descendants of you really are descendants of kings and queens. You need to act like it. You're descendants of people that picked up that picked up the baton and they ran with it, trying to give you freedom. You know, they ran through racism. They ran through lunch counters. They ran through cities being burnt. They ran through being turned down. Even though they have education, even though they had education, they had to end up being garbage collectors or construction people. You know, ditch diggers. You are great simply on the backs of others who are greater than you. And you need to understand that. And as I said, you need to act accordingly. And just to read this to you very quickly about Reese Taylor, she lived after all this happened. She lived in Abbeville with her family for 2 decades after the attack. She said during those years she lived in fear, and many white people in the town continued to treat her badly, even after her attackers left. Now the attackers they moved out. The attackers had to move out because they couldn't handle it. She eventually moved to Florida, where she worked picking oranges. Once again, she had no skills. She had no skills, just backbone. She later separated from her husband, but once again, that's 20 some odd years, almost 30 years later. Their only child died in an automobile accident in 1967. Taylor lived for many years in Winter Haven, Florida, until her family brought her back to Abbeville due to failing health. You know, it's an incredible story. It really is. And this is what, and on April 21st of 2011, this is what the Alabama legislature did. She didn't die until 2017. It says, be it resolved by the legislature of Alabama, both houses thereof concurring, that we acknowledge the lack of prosecution for crimes committed against Reese Taylor by the government of the state of Alabama, that we declare such failure to act was and is morally abhorrent, repugnant, and that we do hereby express profound regret for the role played by the government of the state of Alabama in failing to prosecute the crimes. Be it further resolved that we express our deepest sympathies and solemn regrets to Reese Taylor and her family and friends. Do you think that was enough? Do you think? I don't. My whole thing was, if you feel that way about it, cut her a check. Does it resolve anything? No. But it helps out. It's going to help her out. Cut her a check. She wasn't able to get any. She wasn't able to go to talk to anybody after it happened. She had no mental health resources after that happened. And I'm sure that affected her marriage. Can you imagine? If I'm her, I don't want nobody touching. I don't want another man touching me. If I'm her, her husband hung in there, but it had to affect her in such a way that it ended her marriage. In such a way that she chased her husband away. Not her fault. So when you actually have someone like her, when you have someone that suffered like she did, you're saying, be it resolved by the legislature of Alabama, both houses thereof concurring, it's not good enough. You should have cut her a check. So when you guys say that and do that, it was a nice gesture, but it means nothing. This happened in 1944, and this woman suffered from 1944 to 2017 when she passed away. It's an incredible story. And I have other incredible stories as well. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. Okay, when I come back next week, we have another topic for you. In the meantime, I want to thank y'all for stopping by. I want to thank y'all for listening to Black Story Time, the first story of Black Story Time. And listen, thanks again. I'll be back. My name is Alton Beckett. I'm Big Al. I'm the HNIC of Let Me Say Something. And y'all have a good one, all right? Love y'all. Take care.
Powered by Virginia Radio.